Hello, we have today a guest here from Portugal, José Luis Peixoto, who has written a novel, Saramago and José, which is originally titled Autobiografia. And like the Finnish title tells, it's about Saramago, but it's also much more. Can you tell shortly about the idea of the novel? How did you get the idea?
Okay, so let me start by saying that this novel here in Finland, it's called Saramago and José, which was a title that I have considered when I was still writing the book, but then I chose to call it autobiography, and today I have to say that sometimes I doubt that I have done the right choice. So I'm very happy that this book here, it's called Saramago and José, because sometimes I feel that this should be the original title.
We didn't know.
It happens, you know, but then once it's published, you cannot go back. So now in Portugal, it will always have this title, but I'm happy that in Finland, it's called Saramago and José. Actually, we all know José Saramago, but this novel has two important characters. One is Saramago, the one and only Portuguese author that won Nobel Prize for Literature in 1998. But also there is this other José in the title, which is a young author with this name, José, which by coincidence is my own name. Actually, José is a very common name in Portugal. And the main plot of the novel goes in between these two characters. Saramago, who is a well-established author in his 70s, internationally known and read at the time already. And José, which is an author that has published one novel, lives a very chaotic life. And the novel takes place in the year 97 and 98. That's the action of the novel, and it mixes these two levels, which is real life, let's say. Things that can be identified with José Saramago, of course, who is a person, but here it turns into a character because there is also the fictional level, which is a lot of things that happen here that never happened. And so this novel goes in between these two points. There is José Saramago, his history, his life. There are a lot of recollections of special moments of his life. Some of them are even important if you consider recent Portuguese history. Saramago was born in 1922, and he had a long life, and he touched a lot of important moments in Portuguese history. But then there is also this reflection about writing, about the challenges that the writer faces, and it's a novel that it's in a certain way it's very literary because it talks about books, it talks about writing, but by doing that, I hope that people will feel it as talking about life, because that's what matters in the end.
There is humor also, and as far as I understood, the main character here is a little bit worried about the weight of the tradition. How can I write about such famous writer? Mm-hmm. Do I have the right to, or ability to do that? And how much there was autobiographical José Luis Peixoto?
Yeah, that's why the original title is autobiography, because there is always this kind of game, this riddle that leaves you to wonder if what's written there is autobiographical, because actually there is an information that most people people in Portugal that read my books might know, which is the fact that I knew Saramago after the year 2001, when I got an award with this name. It's the literary award José Saramago. And actually I had the chance to be close to him until he passed away in 2010. And so a lot of what I have written here about Saramago also comes from my memories. And actually for me to write this novel was a bit of a bold exercise, because turning José Saramago, who is such a celebrated author, into a character, and to be like to have him there to do whatever I wanted as a character, but also with the weight of his name, was a big move. But I mean, in terms of what's exactly autobiography or not, I leave it for people to imagine. They will never know, you know. Sometimes they think things that seem true are true, but in fact they're not, and the opposite also happens, and that's okay. That's literature.
When did you be acquainted with the first novel by Saramago? When did you read him first time?
First time I read him, it was in the 90s. In Portugal, there was one of his novels that was very controversial. It's called Gospel According to Jesus Christ. At the time, there was big polemics around this novel, and I was a teenager. I mean, I was in my late teens, and that's when I felt really curious for reading it, and that was the first novel that I ever read by Saramago. But I have to say that one that touched me a lot, the one that has influenced me more on those years, it was one, I'm not sure about the title in English. In Portuguese it's called Levantado do Chão. And it's a novel that describes an history that happens in rural Portugal, which was near me, because I was born in rural Portugal, and so I was very impacted by that book at the time. Then I kept on reading Saramago, because Saramago, of course, it's an author that in Portugal is very influential. And
for me, the novel which was a story of blindness, that was blindness. Important.
Yeah.
That?
Blindness, it's a very important book, of course, when it was published already in mid-90s. And it's a book that has been reread under different lights. Even now, during pandemics, people were rereading it according to what we were going through, because it's a story that, of course, you can take as an example of how people behave in a very broad sense, and that was also an important reading. But actually, the work of Saramago, and actually I have to say that this novel also kind of suggests some connections with the work of Saramago, because if it's like a scholar that knows Saramago's works very well, you will find those connections, because some of the characters have the names of characters by Saramago, and some of the events are related, even though it's not fundamental to have that information to understand the novel, but it brings another level. And the works of Saramago, they are at the same time very diverse, but there is a unity to them. Because of course Saramago wrote from a very specific point of view, which was the point of view of his convictions, his political convictions, his the way he understood humankind, which I think is the center of Saramago's work. A view on humankind.
Yeah, although he has fixed political thinking, but I have thought while reading him that the politics is not in front of it. It's the human.
Yeah.
Human is more, and it's difficult to think in the basis of his novels that he's a politic.
But in Portugal, that aspect was very present because Saramago was very active on the press.
Yeah.
He was very very active as a social person, and so that would have an influence on the reading of his books also, for good or bad. One can never fully control that impact.
Yeah. How has his status maybe changed after the Nobel Prize in Portugal? Has it changed?
Yeah. Actually, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that in this novel there is the moment in which he gets the Nobel Prize, and that moment has a very specific event, which comes like from magical realism, which is books by Saramago start to rain. And that was my way of making a symbolic statement on how Saramago became consensual in one day. Because the day before he got Nobel Prize, people were very divided towards him, and also because of the political views and all that. But the day after Nobel Prize, everybody was proud, and everybody was saying, I always liked Saramago, Of course, then with time things go back to their places. But during those days there was like euphoria. Also because Saramago was the first ever author in any Portuguese language to get the Nobel Prize, and that was something that people were waiting for a while. Hopefully some more will come, because Portuguese language, of course, is very broad. There are a lot of authors that would deserve that distinction. But the reception by the Nobel Prize to Saramago was like total euphoria.
We can go on in Rosebud, where José Luis Peixoto is there at 6 p.m. in the Sivullinen bookshop, and there will be discussion about both this novel and also the brand new poetry collection, which is published by Enoston. Kalle, welcome.
Thank you, Rots.
You can go on here. Maybe.
Okay, should I sit down there?
Yeah.
There will also be coffee available.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rots.
Thank you.
Okay, so all the people watching this stream, and also welcoming on behalf of Enoston Publishing, all these people who came to listen. Today we are launching 2 books by José, and our books is actually not a poetry collection, but it's a mini novel published bilingually. So it's in Swedish the other way, and in Finnish the other way around. And we decided to make it a bilingual edition to celebrate the Finnish nature of bilingually.
It's even 3 books, right?
Yes.
So we have this one, and then this that is actually 2 books.
Yes.
Because I consider always that translations are a version of the original.
Of course, yes.
I think that in this Finnish translation, Rita Dahl is to be credited, and Oriens Sjögren is to be credited by the Swedish translation, because they actually were the ones that wrote these books in these languages. I wrote it in Portuguese.
That's right. Yes, you were talking earlier about the brand new novel Saramago ja José, about that the old José was meeting a young José in a chaotic period of time around 20 years ago. Was it around the time when this actually was becoming? I was thinking that it might collide somehow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Actually, it's true, and it's something that I haven't thought about before. But in '97, that's when I was writing this book.
Yeah.
So the period in which this novel takes place, that's when I was writing this book, which is a book that is incredibly important for me. In Portuguese, it's called Morreste-me, which is a title that is very difficult to translate to most languages. And this book is very different from Saramago and José, but there are also some connections, because this book, this small, how would you pronounce it? Sinä,
Kuolit.
Sinä, Kuolit. It's a book that has changed everything for me. I was 21, 22, my father passed away, and that had a big impact in my life at the time. And I spent 1 year writing this short book, but it was very intense. And then a few years later, in the year 2000, I was 25. I already had written my first novel. Tia Taivas, this Nenhum Olhar novel. But I had no publisher, and I thought that this one I could self-publish it. I did not need anybody because it was so small and I could find a budget to publish it. And so I published it, and it became my first book. This first edition, I just had the chance to make it reach my friends. But then after that novel, Tia Taivas, Nenhum Olhar, I got that José Saramago award, and then this one was published more widely. And it instantly became a book that was very well read. It's still read after more than 20 years. In Portugal, it's still available, which is incredible. And many things have happened to this book. It has been translated. But to me personally, it's a book that I feel that in this brief pages, there are like the roots of everything that I published afterwards. And this thoughts and this question of father-son relationship, the relationship between generations that is here, has been in all my books. Even this Saramago and José, I feel that it's still a variation of that here in terms of the influence of an older writer and a younger writer, of how a younger writer inherits things from older writers, how he continues them, which has also a lot to do with this father-son relationship.
Yes. Also, the Swedish translator Örjan Sjögren, he wrote like a brief introduction, and he mentioned there that on this book you also bring in the poetic language that you have been using also like later on your books, and also the ways of describing the rural areas of Portugal. It has been also important in your books.
Yeah. Well, I wrote this book soon after I left the village where I was born, and that was also a big impact in my life. And after I left living there, I also had the chance to see it a bit better. I had perspective. And actually it was also here where I started to describe that reality from outside.
Yes.
And it's now, over 20 years after, I see that it's a very specific way of living, and it's actually one of the things that I have to say to people to describe this reality. Also, I feel that in a certain sense, the subject of family and the subject of this rural way of life, they are interconnected in my own experience as a reflection on origins.
Yes.
In my case, these are my exact origins, but I expect to suggest to readers their own reflection on their own origins and on their own I don't remember the words. And the problem is when you don't remember a word, you don't remember it in any language. Portuguese, no English, no nothing. References,
Yes.
their own references.
Yes, this book is hauntingly beautiful, and also like it's very touching, very emotional book about the longing and the mourning after your father has passed out. And I have been reading this quite a few times myself. I think this is the book that I have read most from our own catalog. And I have been thinking my own relationship to my father, and also where do I belong, where do I came from. And I felt like, somehow connected. It's also very eternal, like, this is a team that never goes away, as you said. It's still in the stores in Portugal.
I find it very touching to hear that, because one thing that I always feel a bit like afraid is that what's written here is not understood in other countries and in other ways of perceiving emotions and situations like this, because this is a book about mourning also.
Yes.
But let me tell you that throughout my experience of having this book published internationally, I've seen that mourning is actually a very universal feeling, emotion, because sometimes superficially we have cultural differences and we think that those cultural differences are fundamental and that they will divide us. But when we reach subjects like this, we see that it's not the case. I have this bracelet here, for example. This was given to me in India by an Indian reader, Sikh, Yeah. He took it out of his arm and he said he gave me because of this book.
Okay.
And so India, for example, it's a country in which there is very different beliefs regarding death.
Yes.
But still, in terms of mourning, this book was able to touch that reader in Hindi. Of course, the Hindi translators are also to be credited by that. But still, it's amazing, and it goes beyond me. One thing that is very important for me also in this moment to say about this book is that I am no longer the person who wrote it. I still have the same name. It was me in a certain way, but I could not write it today. So I'm still here getting credits for it, but it was something that I did in that time, and I'm very happy that I have written it because it has defined a lot of things in my life.
Yes. Yes, I was thinking that as you mentioned these like cultural differences and how people can relate, that I think this is a theme that people can relate from all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I when I wrote it, I had no conscience about it. But then, along the years, I've heard a lot of people, some of them experts, on mourning. And actually, mourning is a very healthy response to loss. I mean, you need to go through a period of mourning after a loss. Not only when you lose a person, but when you lose a job, when you lose, I don't know, something. It's because especially death, it's something that in a certain way it goes beyond our understanding, because as humans we are not absolute. We don't deal very well, and we don't understand very well things that are endless, things that are everything or nothing. We are imperfect, and death is absolute. You will never see that person again. That person will never call you again, and there is nothing you can do to change that. So that is really difficult to deal with.
Yes, sure.
And mourning is this process that you go through to get to terms with that, to kind of give it some sort of sense, even though sometimes it's really difficult.
Yeah. I think we could say that the Finnish people, at least like, you know, stereotypes, they capsule their emotions, we don't show them. But this could be a really good book for anybody to
I hope so.
understand.
It's a book that has been known like to provoke emotions,
Yes.
and that can be important also, and healthy.
Yeah, I was having one more like bit strange like emotion while I was reading this, because in here the narrator is like, you know, he's mostly going alone, and there's like a silent bubble around him. He observes things, and I somehow felt very strangely about that times when my children were born. Like when the children were born, I felt like I was in a bubble. Nobody could penetrate it, only the child and me. It's a strange, like, you know, time and space.
Yeah. Well,
And I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
also, I felt a little bit like on a way you are the narrator is observing the world.
I can understand, but of course, that's the example you're giving is a very positive
Yes,
one.
it's very positive,
because,
but somehow you are still like inside this kind of a dome, invisible dome that divides people outside and you're inside.
it's a very strong experience
Yes.
to become a father, or also to lose your father, and so you have to. I mean, you cannot you cannot avoid to live it, and you cannot avoid to be touched and shaken by it.
So now that we have this book in Finnish and Swedish, you told me on Saturday that it has been translated in some very strange languages or very small ones.
Yeah. Well, now in Portugal is going to be published in Mirandês, which is a language that is spoken in the north region, in a specific region next to Miranda do Douro, and I'm not sure about this, but I've heard that it's spoken by around 20,000 people. But well, it's nice to have it published in that language. Also, a language that was very meaningful to me was Creole from Cabo Verde, because I lived in Cabo Verde also in the 90s. I was a teacher there, and also, you know, Cabo Verde used to be a colony from Portugal. I was born in September 1974, when the colonial, when Portuguese colonies were already over as colonies, and where the dictatorship that we had in Portugal that was very strong, and that shaped Portuguese recent history was over. And it's really nice that to have this book being published in this language is a way of recognizing the importance of this language. And so, I mean, books, they also work in that way. They're also symbolic in that way.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to say something in Portuguese for the stream? I think I'm done on my behalf. Let people have coffee.
Bem, também temos aqui alguns portugueses, não é? A comunidade portuguesa e brasileira também, a comunidade falante português aqui em Helsinki, que é muito tocante também. Algumas pessoas eu já conheço há muito tempo aqui, desde as primeiras vezes que eu vim cá à Finlândia, porque incrivelmente I came for the first time to Finland. Next year it will be the 20th year.
Okay, we have to come again next year.
Yes. 2003 foi a primeira vez que eu vim aqui à Finlândia e a Helsinki. E pronto, enviar um grande abraço para todos. Muito obrigado por tirarem um tempo nesta segunda-feira à meia da tarde para estar aqui. E é um prazer para mim estar aqui convosco. Obrigado.
Okay,
Kiitos.
kiitos.